Chapter 14. The Inner Meaning of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I have been asked to give a metaphysical interpretation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, one of Grimm's fairy tales. It is amazing how this picture, a fairy tale, swept sophisticated New York and the whole country due to Walt Disney's genius. This fairy tale was supposed to be for children, but men and women have packed the theater. It is because fairy tales come down from old legends of Persia, India, and Egypt, which are founded on truth. Snow White, the little princess, has a cruel stepmother who is jealous of her. This cruel stepmother idea appears also in Cinderella. Nearly everyone has a cruel stepmother. The cruel stepmother is a negative thought form you have built up in the subconscious. Snow White's cruel stepmother is jealous of her and always keeps her in rags and in the background. All cruel thought forms do this. The cruel stepmother consults her magic mirror every day, saying, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" One day the mirror replies, "Thou, queen, mayest fair and beauteous be, but Snow White is lovelier far than thee." This enrages the queen, so she decides to send Snow White to the forest to be killed by one of her servants. However, the servant's heart melts when Snow White begs for her life, so he leaves her in the woods. The woods are filled with terrifying animals and many pitfalls and dangers. She falls in terror to the ground, and while there, a most unusual spectacle presents itself. Scores of the most delightful little animals and birds creep up and surround her. Rabbits, squirrels, deer, beavers, raccoons, etc. She opens her eyes and greets them with pleasure. They are so friendly and attractive. She tells her story, and they lead her to a little house which she makes her home. Now these friendly birds and animals symbolize our intuitive leads or hunches, which are always ready to get you out of the woods. The little house proves to be the home of the seven dwarfs. Everything is in disorder, so Snow White and her animal friends begin to clean the house. The squirrels dust with their tails. The birds hang things up, using their little deer horns for a hat rack. When the seven dwarfs come home from their work of digging gold, they discover the change and at last find Snow White asleep on one of their beds. In the morning, she tells her story, remains with them to keep house and cook their meals, and is very happy. The seven dwarfs symbolize the protective forces all about us. In the meantime, the cruel stepmother consults her mirror and it says to her, "Over the hills in the green wood shade, where the seven dwarfs their dwelling have made, there Snow White is hiding her head, and she is lovelier by far, O queen, than thee." This infuriates the queen, so she starts off disguised as an old hag, with a poisoned apple for Snow White. She finds her in the house of the seven dwarfs and tempts her with the big, red, delicious apple. The birds and animals endeavor to tell her not to touch it. They try to give her the hunch not to eat it. They rush around in dismay, but Snow White can't resist the apple. She takes one bite and falls, apparently dead. Now all the little birds and animals rush off to bring the seven dwarfs to the rescue, but too late, Snow White lies lifeless. They all bow their little heads in grief. Then suddenly, the prince appears, kisses Snow White, and she comes to life. They are married and live happily ever after. The queen and cruel stepmother is swept away by a terrific storm. The old thought form is dissolved and dissipated forever. The prince symbolizes the divine plan of your life. When it wakes you up, you live happily ever after. This is the fairy story which has enthralled New York and the whole country. Find out what form of tyranny your cruel stepmother is taking in your subconscious. It is some negative conviction which works out in all your affairs. We hear people saying, "My good always comes to me too late. I've lost so many opportunities." We must reverse the thought and say repeatedly, "I am wide awake to my good. I never miss a trick." We must drown out the dreary suggestions of the cruel stepmother. Eternal vigilance is the price of freedom from these negative thought forms. Nothing can hinder, nothing can delay the manifestation of the divine plan of my life. The light of lights streams on my pathway, revealing the open road of fulfillment. And this concludes The Secret Door to Success by Florence Scovel Shinn.